The Young Man's Story, Chapter 7, The Practice of Patience Part 2. The Young Man.
Patience was one such ability in particular I made much effort to acquire. Many abilities and skills were important I felt to instill in myself, but patience stands out, as does one other, reading people. We'll get to it later. I'm trying to remember the steps of thought which led me to patience. I recall its power and draw but offhand not how I came to it. A construction I remember I arrived at by building a logic train. I will immerse in my thinking of then which usually enables me to recreate my thoughts and in the process stirs and stimulates my memory. I'm spelling this out here, as I go, because this is a specific technique I've developed which falls under the psychological tools and techniques I've created. This technique connects back to the not having to rely on memory position I had taken on as a goal in life. I figured if something was logically constructed in the first place, then there was little need to remember. All one had to know was the end point, in this case patience. From there the rest should be relatively easy to reconstruct and figure out again if need be. I reasoned also logic was like a story, one thing leading to another, and once one had the start and got into it, the steps triggered themselves and stimulated memory. So let's see how it goes with figuring out why and how patience came to be so important. When I looked at what I would need to learn on my path to perfection, I realized I would need much, way much. I'd already established expanding my awareness was an imperative. But just being aware wasn't enough. I would still have to deal with whatever I found in the world. I looked about at what caused people stress. What they worried about, their fears. Matters like crime, beyond basic sensible security, there wasn't much one could do. So to me, in my obvious logic, no point in worrying about it. Such matters were issues of awareness and through awareness would be taken care of by way of attending to precautions.
Listening.
Then there was financial worry. Wasn't much I could immediately do about that as it was a long-term issue and needing studies specifically geared to that end. Not something personally relevant to me right then, so I focused on how it affected and impacted others.
A-OK hand.
I soon saw almost inevitably worries weren't based on any kind of sensible perspective at all. The worriers were almost always worried about something. What exactly was never very clearly defined. With this checking out of financial worry, I ended up skipping all of the other categories because I realized the same mechanisms of worry applied. The anxiety was inevitably a concern about the future. Amazingly enough, it wasn't a concern for something which was probable or likely at all. No, it was simply in almost every case a worry about what might be. Fascinating and amazing to me. I looked at shorter time scale worries. I was keen to see what happened when something which had specific time attached to it came to pass, and when the worry didn't materialize as it was supposedly destined to, what the reaction would be.
Safety.
I was most keen to see what would happen when they realized their worrying had been for nothing. I had of course observed much worrying. Adults, though, were kind of a lost cause when it came to studies of this nature. From my earliest memories it was thoroughly evident they were mostly just plain silly and did most of what they did because they thought it's what they were supposed to do. It was always clear grown-ups were hypocrites. Not a word for me as a very young child, only coming in my teens, but I knew this without the word from before I went to school. And it seemed to me so did all the kids, until they too became hypocrites, especially as they matured. I'm trying to think exactly how I thought of this aspect of adults when I was very young.
Question mark.
How had I thought of the discrepancy between what adults did and said? But even more so, between what they actually believed and what they said had to be done. They clearly told the kids to do things they didn't believe in. That was it, that was how I thought of it as a very young child. They told kids us to do silly things. Which made them silly, despite as in my parents' cases, being intelligent. A clear distinction to me right from the get-go. The difference between ability and possibility, and actual sensibility. Intelligence did not automatically translate into sensibility. In fact, it wasn't correlated at all. I knew many people who would not be considered intelligent at all, including by themselves, but they were sensible for the most part. Then there were people like teachers and principals and my father, a medical doctor and general brainiac, and also man of the people, who constantly displayed very obvious signs of intelligence, but yet also constantly did silly things. He could speak multiple languages, displayed obvious math skills and had an extensive general knowledge, but yet he was a slave to the perceptions of others. He made clear and obvious efforts to have status and to be cool before the word was even around.
Shaved ice, hamburger, sick face.
For instance, in the very remote tiny town we lived until I was 9, telephones were just coming to be installed. We lived at number 8, our phone number was 8, and his surgery was 08 at first and then 88, and the number plates of the 2 family cars were also 8s. I don't remember them all exactly, but some variation on the theme of 8. All achieved because in such a tiny town, for quite a while he was the only doctor in the entire district and about as close to a king in modern times as one can get without actually holding office. Being the doctor was a huge deal. He had used his status to get those numbers assigned and was very obviously very pleased with himself for achieving this. It gave him a lot of pleasure. Our attention was directed by him at his feat of importance and cleverness. We too thought it was neat at the time. Lol, the cool word for cool, before cool. But the deeper motivations of ego and status were evident to me, and nothing neat about them. But it didn't change my perspective of the essential silliness of it. And of him. Just one example, there were many others, all leading to the clear understanding that intelligence didn't necessarily go with sensibility and could coexist with foolishness in the same person. I got a bit distracted in my detour. Where was I?
Safety?
Yes, about studying worrying in adults. They were hopeless cases already, so no real point in observing what happened when a needless worry turned out to be for nothing. I was studying worrying in general at this point, any worry, no matter how small. From pimples to exams to getting into trouble with the police.
Lol.
What I saw when the needless worries turned out to be just that, was it made very little difference. Most people went back to worrying to the same degree they had before. No change whatsoever, no adapting to the reality of the outcome and the pointlessness of their stress. This of course led me to try and make sense of it, which I did as part of my psychological construction. Through this effort I came to realize all those worries came about because those worriers simply didn't know how to wait.
No patience?
My potent discovery when I analyzed it all, they knew the worry was silly, they knew all they had to do was wait and the time would come when their worry wasn't an issue, but yet they couldn't wait without worrying.
Fascinating.
Yes, exactly. They had no patience. This understanding led me to my definition of patience. Patience was a word and concept which was around, but so used and abused it didn't have a very clear meaning at all. Just this vague sort of desirable goal no one really thought was possible to actually achieve. But I clearly saw how patience was beneficial. When I came to think about it in terms of me fully understanding and figuring out exactly why it was good and useful, I put together my understanding from the worry study and defined it as: patience is being able to wait without stress. That was it, just like that. Nice and simple. But was huge for me.
Simple. Continued in Chapter 7 Part 3. Hashtag the young man, hashtag patience, hashtag worry, hashtag anxiety, hashtag silliness, hashtag intelligence, hashtag sensibility, hashtag hypocrisy, hashtag foolish adults.